Man, what a week. What a week. What a week. So, if you've been monitoring the news lately, it just seems like every day you wake up, there is another headline regarding the economy, regarding bonds, regarding trade disputes, and all this stuff. And now the latest, at least as of today, which is January 20th, 2026, we are currently entering yet another trade spat with the EU, which seems primarily to concern Greenland and, the United States trying to, claim Greenland, so to speak, to keep it away from, China and Russia and keeping them from getting influence over that. And however, this is, clearly creating a feeling of dread for the people living in Greenland, right, who want their sovereignty respected, understandably. And it's also causing concerns with their neighbors in the EU. And so now this basically brings us to a newly developing trade spat, which could also involve potentially the EU selling off U.S. debt, right? Which would have the effect of making our bond yields go up because there's less demand for them, which then in turn makes it more expensive for us because we have to pay more in interest to get people to buy our debt, right? So what's really fascinating about this stuff to me is just how quickly you can go from just, this fleeting sense of like stability to like, now all of a sudden, right, you wake up, the Dow's down 700 points, gold is up 3 percentage points, silver's up like, I want to say like 6%, right? And it's just like this roller coaster that just keeps on going. And when you're just trying to invest and just make sensible investments and you have to constantly keep watching the headlines, this can just be a lot to take in and just keep track of, right? Especially when you don't know where things are going. So for me right now, I am more so just sticking to my usual plan and just monitoring ongoing developments. Like, for example, I have some silver, and as of right now, that's going up in value. I have my Vanguard Total Stock Market. That right now is probably about to go down in value, but we'll see what happens with that, But namely, what I'm looking out for right now in the grand scheme of things, if I do decide to pull the trigger on anything specifically, is just figuring out, like, where are things headed next? Because the issue with times like this, for example, when you're trying to figure out like a move that can make sense, at least for somebody like me who's more of like a long-term buy and hold kind of guy, I don't really like to, do like a lot of options trading and stuff like that. I'm more so just trying to get a better sense of where exactly are we going with these geopolitical tensions, right? Like, are we going to be in trade spats with the EU and China, India? I don't even know who to all include and who not to include at this point. But like, is it going to be like this for the next 3 years, right? And if so, then what should I consider doing with my portfolio, right? Or will there eventually come a time where some of these countries start to form alliances, right, in an effort to push back against the United States, right, from throwing our weight around, with these, trade demands, right, these tariffs, right? And then also, like, what is the long-term impact of these tariffs on the U.S. consumer, right, as well as small and medium businesses? Like, are they still stomaching a lot of these cost increases? And are they eventually going to reach a point where they can't stomach them anymore and they have to pass these costs down, right? And then you look at just, say, for example, also AI, which is impacting the labor market, right? How does that continue to change things? So it just, for me, one of these times where there's just a lot of chaos happening in the headlines and such. And I'm more so just am trying to take a step back a bit and just think about where all this stuff is going, just to help keep myself from getting too caught up in, panic trading or, making any unnecessary moves or anything like that. And so obviously for those out there, who do understand how to capitalize on volatility and make those kind of moves, this could be one of those perfect situations you've been looking for. I'm not too versed in that stuff myself, but in terms of, the broader macro view and where things are going, that's more so the area I try to play in. So as of right now, not going to do anything different just yet. And more so just want to get a view of, one, how does the EU start to respond, to our new trade threats? And what do they actually follow through with? Is this another case where spats continue and then we somehow manage to reach a deal? What does China wind up doing, if anything, right? Like, for example, would they step in to, invest more into UK's debt, for example, if the US decides to pull out? I don't know, but these are the kind of scenarios I'm just thinking about lately. And so I'll just be keeping an eye on the news for now and see where this takes us. So, man, you gotta love times like this, right? Where you just don't know what's gonna happen, but let's see. So that's my thoughts for today, and let's see where things go from here. All right, peace.